Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schmidt List. I am your host, Kurt Schmidt, and I am so excited that you are joining me today. I've got my friend Craig on the show. We've been friends for a long time. This is his first time on the show. I thought for sure he had been on the show because we've known each other for so long. Make sure you go to LinkedIn and check out the Solo Connection. The Solo Club is up and the private group is available on LinkedIn. You can check out links in the description. People are running their own businesses, wanting to share info and techniques and tools in our LinkedIn group. And then we also have our peer advisory group, which you can always ask and find out more. And one last plug, the new book 10-10-10 is out and available now. So go and check that out. Links in the description. All right. Today we're going to be talking about marketing challenges with Craig. Craig has been someone who has probably learned and forgotten more about marketing and all the things that go into making marketing successful than most people. Craig, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Kurt.
I'm so excited that you're here. I should have worn my CP shirt, but it's laundry day, so it's in there. You're at Braveco now. You're doing Braveco. Tell me about that and the types of work you do and who do you work with?
Yes, Braveco is a marketing consultancy that guides leaders ready for change. We do that in two ways: fractional marketing leadership and project-based advisory. I lead many of those engagements, but I also work with a group of partners that solve a variety of marketing challenges, whether it's strategy and planning, UX and design, media and measurement, influencer and public relations, photography and video execution. We do this in a variety of industries, whether it's professional services, higher education, healthcare, CPG, B2B, B2C, B2B2C things. So to me, it's an industry agnostic discipline that we really hold true. In a nutshell, that's what Braveco is and what our focus is today.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Craig, because to your point, I think a lot of industries can learn from each with that. I think that having that ability to take ideas from B2C, put them to B2B, because I mean, it's all people in the end, right?
Right. Yep. It is. It is. And I draw from a variety of different industries where they can learn from one another. It's nothing proprietary that's shared client by client. However, when we engage clients at the very beginning, the problems they're trying to solve may not be the same, but they oftentimes are trying to solve the same problems, if that makes sense. It might
sure.
be in a different part of the marketing and brand experience. It might be further up front where they're really trying to better understand their audiences and who they should be targeting. It could be all the way on the back end where they're trying to better measure and optimize performance of a campaign. The common problems that exist in marketing are prevalent. Where people need to focus and get a starting point for how they solve their individual challenge is where it becomes a little bit more customized and unique. And if you look at the different industries using like a professional services and higher education as examples, the lead time is significant, as you know. There's a
It's double, triple
time.
Yeah.
So much goes into it. Whereas you're in the CPG world and you're on a day-to-day, hour-by-hour e-com basis and pivoting and iterating. So I just think there's a lot to be learned across industries and different areas of business and different business models.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, and speaking of those challenges, Craig, I want to hear, some of the interesting ways that you're seeing people and some of the things that maybe have changed over the last couple of years in the way that people are maybe not executing on marketing, but maybe how they're approaching it.
That's a great question. And I think, each time we get asked that question, our answers might be a little bit different. And honestly, I've always been curious about another way to make marketing work, whether it was working for advertising agencies, working on the client side at General Mills.
Yeah.
It just always felt like there was a better way, right? And there was a different way, a more efficient way, a more fulfilling way. And I continued to spend a ton of time thinking about that and trying to figure out the best way to orchestrate marketing teams for small businesses in particular, because I do think they have some unique challenges, of course. And also related to that, based on how many more people are independent out in the market today, has really honestly been inspiring to me to have more validation, even that there is a more flexible, adaptable way to staff, build, lead, and create marketing teams and support and resources for small businesses. I always had a hunch that was true, because working for agencies, you'd want to work with a small business, and very quickly it became too expensive due to overhead,
Sure.
the amount of people involved. If it's an integrated agency, you kind of have to default to doing everything. Whereas again, as we talked about previously, the very specific problem might be about, audience insight and creating a journey map that allows a client to understand how should they assess the experience that they're designing for a client. Um, and now that there are so many more independent people out in the market that are very honed at their craft, right?
Mhm.
So they might be a UX designer, awesome, a writer, a media strategist, a measurement analyst, an
Yep.
influencer and PR person. Those are all incredibly valuable skills that small businesses need. They just don't need them all at the same time. And I do think that's a big difference. And as you think about the people who are out in the world who are independent, whether they're new and just getting started now, or they've been at it for 5 years like me, or they've been at it 10 plus years like many folks that I've been working with. It's really understanding their craft, but then also the types of work that makes them tick and the projects they're most fulfilled by.
Mhm.
That is a really, really important part of the equation that I think oftentimes gets overlooked, because you can find not a lot, but there are some really stellar designers out in the market,
Yeah.
but they can't articulate the type of work that fulfills them most. And that's where I have a hard time potentially building a partnership, because I want to help them find more opportunities where they're feeling best about the work that they're doing. And then you add a client on top of that, that I've become more keen to finding that I have a really good sense that they'll be a good partner. That's where things get really fun and interesting. If I can
Mhm.
find an opportunity, the client genuinely needs help in a particular area that I believe
Yep.
Braveco can help. And then I'll go find a couple people who are best fit to solve that problem, who I know have passion for the problem that's trying to be solved, the industry that it is in, or the type of leader that we'll be working with. That's 5 years in, but that's been a huge unlock for me, I think, this year, in really figuring out how Braveco can do more meaningful work for the clients that we serve.
Yeah. I think it's great because again, you look at the different business models when it comes to providing professional services. And since the 50s and the 60s all the way into the 80s and 90s, I mean, you had this idea of the agency of record, right? Where basically, Marlboro cigarettes would be like, we have $1 million a year for our budget. Whoever wins our agency of record, they get the $1 million a year. And then it's up to the agency to just deliver on whatever that budget was for the year. But we've moved into this MRR sort of world where we've got these retainers that are monthly retainers that are driving, I think, in some cases, bad forecasting for agencies, bad forecasting for clients, right? Because as you know, and I know, and even the clients know, that you can't just hire a marketing team and then in a couple of weeks you're seeing results. It takes time, and everybody understands it. But we still pretend sometimes that we bill by the hour or by the month or by the sprint or things like that, when we all know like these things are going to take time. So I feel like there's some unmet expectations, because it's also hard to go to a client and say like, here is what 6 months is going to cost you. And that's a big price tag compared to showing them what a month looks like. It looks more digestible, right?
Yeah.
Even though and they know this is going to take 6 months to see any results.
Yeah.
But we don't have those conversations because the world hasn't been built around that. We've been built into these smaller bite-sized chunks. And I don't really have a question here, Craig, but I just want to get your reaction.
I understand what you're saying. And that's part of the traditional way in which the agency models have been built. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the
Yeah.
way. Like, to be super clear, I have learned an incredible amount in my career working at a variety of different shapes and sizes of agencies.
Yeah.
The intention and the work that they do can be remarkably great. And it can be, for sure, a great investment for the client to get a return on what they're looking to accomplish. I just believe that, to your point, trying to forecast needs for a client 6, 12, 2 years down the road, which oftentimes agencies are looking to get engagements agreed upon for that duration, is really challenging, especially again for small businesses. And the other thing that I would say is one of my biggest frustrations working at any organization, but just let's use agencies as an example, is you're stuck with the cards that are dealt to you. You have full-time employees, and the default always for an agency is going to be, how do we get as many FTEs, build as much as possible at this percentage? Whereas the Braveco model does not work that way at all. Again, we try to figure out what is the first thing we should be doing together. Let's scope for that. Let's start making progress there. And then as we progress and we start to uncover new things where there's opportunity, we'll then enlist talent, write another scope, and be on our way. And the motivations are also different. In that situation, more than likely, I'll be serving as a fractional marketing lead where I can identify these opportunities over time. As I bring people in to support Braveco, whatever we're doing at that moment, they are independent business owners. I do not mark up their rates. I do not take a commission off of the work that they do for the clients that I may have initiated in the first place.
Yeah.
I've gone back and forth on this a lot. I've had a lot of people's opinions about how to monetize that in particular, right, as a business owner. But when I start having that conversation with my partners, and I've experimented with it on a few projects, and it just doesn't quite feel right. The conversation changes. Whereas what I realize now with the collective that I've built and have partnership with is there's a sense of abundance. And if we can work together and share work opportunities with each other as they come, the equity for Braveco goes up substantially because they are outstanding at what they do. And anytime I put them in front of a client, they deliver outstanding work. And so I remain convinced that while it may not be the most efficient business model and leaving money on the table, it feels right because my motivation with Braveco is to make me and my family as comfortable as we can be. It isn't to scale it. It isn't to sell it. We're living in the moment that Braveco currently is. And to me, it's taken a while to get there, but it feels very settling and fulfilling. And I think I feel most comfortable and confident as I go into new business conversations that is our motivation. And if you're really upfront with people, I think they're kind of taken back. They're like, really? You don't want to sign a 12-month retainer right now? No, I don't. It's not the best thing for your business. The work won't be right. And I feel a responsibility and accountability, especially in a fractional role where I'm involved with the leadership team over a period of time, that conscious decisions need to be made because it's going to impact the sustainability and long-term impact of their business when I'm gone.
Okay.
Like when I'm
Makes
gone
sense.
is a really important moment.
Yeah. Well, what's your opinion about how clients should be looking at, because they can be confused on, am I hiring a freelancer, an agency, or a fractional person? And these terms seem to get bantered around in the last year very interchangeably. So do you want to give me your definition and what your advice would be for people that are seeking these kind of services, should be thinking about it?
Honestly, I don't mean to punt, but when I started consulting, I was doing fractional marketing leadership, but it wasn't even called that then.
Yeah.
I would find a client that needed help over a period of time that did not have leadership or the capability to do it with a focus. So I had a few clients that were ahead of the curve as it relates to how they were thinking about staffing their business. But I would say if you want to call it a consultant, a fractional, a freelance, an independent, they all kind of mean the same thing. They are contractors who are going to come work on your business, probably for an hourly rate or a project fee. The mechanics of it remain the same across all those different labels. I think, yeah.
That's the part I want to get at is it just nomenclature? Is that because, is it freelancers have rebranded themselves as fractional because it just sounds better, just like we used to, we changed time to story points for development, right? I think it can be confusing if you're an HVAC supplier in, a mid-sized city and you're looking for an agency to, you've been told like, go get a marketing agency, they'll help you out or whatever. And you're seeing all these terms, marketing consultant, fractional CMO,
Right.
marketing agency, all these things. I think it can be confusing for these people to understand what should I be buying, when their MBA, basically tells them like find a advertising agency or something because it's curriculum from the 80s, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It is confusing. It's noisy. It really, it's challenged Braveco in a way, but it's also pushed me to think more clearly about the outcomes. Like, what sort of outcome can I imagine the prospective client is looking for? I will try to shift the conversation earlier in the conversation to be like, if we were to partner together, or if you were to find a solution for whatever problem you're trying to solve, what is the best outcome that would happen? There will be obvious ones: more leads, more sales, more engagements, in-market activity, always. How do we get there? Who's doing the work? Who's creating the plan? How are you finding partners? Do you have the right processes and methods internally to build a marketing plan? Do you have a budget? Do you need help writing job descriptions? Do you need help recruiting? Do you need help onboarding these new people into your business? So as Braveco exits, you have a smooth transition for them to be a full-time employee. And by the way, that full-time employee is going to be quite different than how we started articulating it when we started working together 3 months ago. It is noisy, and it's hard for me to articulate and define each one of those different ways to describe someone who can come in and offer fresh perspective on how to grow your business. I try not to get caught up in it. I do think the fractional piece in particular, to me, is a sign for folks now that it is over a longer period of time. There's going to be a little bit more involvement, and more than likely the person is going to have more experience. That to me feels like the differentiator that is important, and why I do say fractional. I also don't default to fractional CMO. That's a level that a person may or may not need. And frankly, a lot of consultants may or may not be able to actually deliver on. So noisy. It's a noisy one.
Yeah. And I just asked because I don't expect you to have the answer, but I really enjoy getting the perspective of people like yourself on how you're approaching it, how you're differentiating yourself in a way that makes sense for other folks to understand. Because again, in the end, like, our goal is to provide services to the clients. And if they don't even know what to ask for, it's pretty hard to sell them services.
Exactly. I think you nailed it though, Kurt. This is not a criticism, but just like you and I in the moment might be asked, well, what problem do you think we're trying to solve? You're like, I think it's this. But oftentimes, even through discovery, which I know is a thing that all consultants will do and say, but I will oftentimes scope discovery as a very minute thing to say, we need to spend time together to understand exactly where you probably need the most help. I would prefer to be paid for that if you're willing to do so. And then I'll come back to you with a very specific plan for what I think you actually need. Right. That's not super common based on what I've seen and heard in the market. That is built into a 6-month scope, with a pretty expensive price tag, but then the client is at risk of rolling the dice to figure out the partner can even solve the problem that they're looking to solve.
Yeah, it's scary to sign up for that, right? But again, I think on how you show up, and you alluded to this too, Craig. If I'm showing up and I'm not selling services and I'm selling impact and I'm selling results, because I have the confidence that I can, if I work with Braveco, can I expect a 10 to 20% increase in bottom line revenue over the next year? Right? Those are the types of things that people will pay for versus, we can do some LinkedIn ads for you. Would you like that? But that's the thing, is that this is the challenge I've seen with marketing over the years, is the types of agencies that are more implementation versus strategic, and the differences between them. Because as a business owner early on in my career, I went out and I found marketing people to help. I was shocked by how many people were like, what's your plan? What's your go-to-market strategy? And I'm like, well, that's what I was hoping you would help me with. And they were like, we will make your site SEO friendly to whatever keywords you tell us it needs to be. And then we will create marketing and campaigns around whoever you tell us you should be going after. And so I got stuck very quickly because I was like, oh, I don't have all that information put together, and then we engaged with Craig. Craig actually helped us identify who that target group was before we even talked about how to go to market. And so, are you still seeing that out there? Are people coming to Braveco and saying like, how much for an email campaign, or are they asking for help me define my ICP?
Both.
Yeah.
I would say,
Yeah.
many are interested in, to your point, the ROI piece. So I think you said like 10 to 20% growth. If I were to agree to that at the upfront, I'm set up for failure. There are so many factors that influence growth for a business. I am one part of the leadership team. I am tangentially involved in the product or service that is being offered. There are just so many factors that go into business growth that I think if someone does come to me and they're like, we need leads now, Braveco probably isn't the best place to go.
Right. Sure.
At least with me being more involved in that situation, I would, if I were to believe this potential client could be a good fit for Braveco, if the answer is yes to that, and they're like, we do need leads for this reason, we feel 1,000% confident in who we're targeting, our messaging, the experience, the ability to convert, the ability to follow up on sales, right? Assuming that's all true, which is rare. And I would refer them to someone who's an expert in paid media on LinkedIn, as an example. I would get out of the way and let that person do the work. Because if the expectation is leads tomorrow, that's probably what you should be doing. If you're looking for higher quality leads and you're trying to grow in a new audience or in a different direction that you have not explored before, that's probably where I can step in and add a little bit more value.
Yeah. Well, it's a different ask, right? I mean, because but that goes back to my earlier thing, is that if the client even knows what they need for sure, if they're able to articulate it. And what I find is that a lot of these, I'd say mid-sized businesses, you usually have just that one marketing person. They are the marketing department. And basically their full-time job ends up like running the blog.
Totally. Social media feeds, email, all the work that is real.
100%. Yeah. When there's a challenge and they're like, hey, we need to step up in this area, that's when I see them outsourcing and looking for ways to outsource, not necessarily to add people to the team, right? But to your point, if the people they're bringing in don't fully understand what the solution is, I mean, do you prefer coming into places where they have a marketing and some sort of representation versus they have nothing? Does that make the job easier, or is it still the same challenges?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we've experienced both. I would say it is helpful to have somebody on point to support, produce, and project manage initiatives through. So if we get really clear on a campaign idea and we want to get it out into the market, I certainly can lead clients through that experience and get them the resources needed to deliver. There's a lot of follow-up, a lot of orchestration that needs to happen on the client side. I typically can do myself, but sometimes that can be a place we find challenges, is making sure that everybody's on the same page about delivery dates, who needs to review what, when. When you're working with a small business, I usually work pretty closely with the founder or CEO, not always available at the moment I might need them, and vice versa. So I think it is really important to have somebody who can really champion marketing activity on the client side. It doesn't necessarily need to be a marketing coordinator per se, but I do think it is helpful. And also, based on the work that I do, if it's a fractional situation, it's hard to it's hard for me to work my way out of that partnership if there isn't somebody there that can the day to day as I offboard. And so at that point, it does make sense to have a more focused or full-time marketing person there to carry the plan forward, make sure that it's being executed. And then I might do quarterly check-ins, or, if they want perspective as they're working through it, they can let me know. But I try to build as much of the foundational pieces as I can, so the client then can remain, again, independently sustained with how they approach marketing moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's smart. So one last piece of advice I'd want from you, Craig, is that if there's business owners that are listening, regardless if they're in B2B, B2C, B2B to C, whatever the case may be, ABC,
Yeah.
XYZ, you know, is there anything that you've been seeing, that tactics, strategies that have been working across those groups over the past 6 months or a year, go to sort of spot for you, or is it always a completely custom? Is there anything that you've been seeing that maybe not throw all your money at, but something you should be paying attention to?
To me, it always starts with the consumer and the
Yeah.
prospective buyer for the client.
Because they're always in different places, right?
They are, and clients that I work with have varying understanding, empathy, or insights about their prospective customers and how they buy or engage with their product or service. So to me, audience insights is usually a rich field to explore. It's not meant to be a 6-month, $100,000 research initiative. I have a new client who's in the bulking industry. They know their clients and their prospects. They just have never formally put it on paper, articulated it, and built a plan to say, hey, if we were to get more people like this, where are they? What is the size of their business? And how do we engage with them?
Yeah.
How do we engage them piece is where usually there's work to be done too, right? Because they now are talking about a customer who works in this types of industry and they want to bring them in as a banking client. The core problems they're trying to solve are 1, 2, 3. And as a bank, we need to show up and say we can help them solve those. And that can oftentimes be a big unlock. Most clients Braveco engages with, there's usually good insight drawn from that experience. And then it helps us kind of prioritize what else we do. So I think the funnel with audience and targeting and segmenting and understanding what makes them tick is critically important. I think prioritization is another common thing. Hair on fire, you're a small business. It's hard to figure out what you should be doing, when and why. And as I look across different clients in different industries, I have a pretty good sense of where we should be prioritizing our efforts and why. And we can test and experiment to see if we're right on those priorities. Priorities is hard because there's a lot for a small business to do. And the last thing I would say is accountability. Sometimes they just don't have enough resources on the client side to bring accountability to move this forward and show up at a meeting or make a decision.
Caught up in every shiny thing, right?
Yeah. So I think the audience piece too allows companies, whether they're a product or service, to identify new audiences that can ultimately grow the business because they're finding new ways to enter a market, to engage and see if there are incremental customers that they can bring in addition to the market they're currently focused in on.
Yeah. That's the other thing, kind of what I alluded to there, is the shiny object syndrome that a lot of folks suffer from. Everybody does. To your point, they don't have a very mature marketing process or philosophy that can take over quickly, right? Because AI looks very fun and I can just AI all my stuff, right? Why is that not working? You told me AI was going to do all that stuff for me, Craig.
Yeah. Well, the example I just gave, when we talk about outcomes and ROI, like, well, what's the ROI on being more empathetic with our customers? It's squishy for sure. I think it drives you to more meaningful, creative messaging, ways to engage and finding the right person at the right time. A common challenge I see for clients and for Braveco included is, what are you measuring and why, based on where people are in the journey to purchase your product or service? using leads, the proxy for leads is people are interested. Well, what about everything else that has happened before who's decided to engage in your product or service through a forum, as an example, or at an event to shake your hand? They've been influenced in a variety of ways further upstream or in a different place within the journey. And so I've been working a lot with clients to help them understand what metrics make sense based on where they are in the journey. Because if a client will say, I want leads. Yes, we really need awareness. We need more people to know about our brand. Fair. If that is what you think you need, there's a different metric and measurement and proxy that we should be looking at to show we have actually lifted brand awareness. And by the way, that's not going to turn into a lead in 3 months, depending on your business. If you're a service company,
Right.
it could be 6 to 12 to 18 months. And then you need to be looking 6 to 12 to 18 months down the road to see if that person actually converted. That really flips people's mindset, I think, in a good way. A lead or a sale is ultimately what hits our bottom line. But thinking about the entire journey and the experience and measuring accordingly can really help you unlock new opportunities to get people through the journey in a more efficient and cost-effective way.
Fantastic advice, Craig. If I want to get in touch with you, if I want to know more about Braveco, where do I go? Where do I find out more information?
Best place to go would be gobrave.co.
That's pretty easy, brave.co. Okay, and I'll have a link in the description for everybody if you want to check it out. Craig, thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I really appreciate it. We got to do it again.
Kurt.
All right. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time out of a week to spend with us. It's a lot of fun. You know, Craig's great. And go and check out the work there. It's really cool. He also posts a lot of great stuff on LinkedIn, so follow him as well. We'll see you next